Imagine a stage lit up by spotlights, packed with the greatest bodybuilders on the planet. The crowd roars, the lights blaze brighter, and the history of the sport is about to change forever. It's 1965, the year Mr. Olympia was born. A competition that would become to bodybuilding what the World Cup is to soccer, the ultimate showcase. It wasn't just about muscles. It was about the pursuit of human physical perfection. That first night, one name echoed louder than all the rest: Larry Scott. A young American with a perfectly balanced physique and magnetic stage presence. He wasn't just another competitor. He was the face of a new era, the man who turned bodybuilding into a spectacle. When Larry lifted the trophy high, he became the very first Mr. Olympia in history, marking the beginning of a golden age the sport would never forget. But what made that moment so special? Up to then, bodybuilding was still an underground scene. Niche, misunderstood, and far from glamorous. Mr. Olympia changed everything. It brought together only the best of the best, guys who had already won titles like Mr. America or Mr. Universe, and set the bar higher than ever. On that stage, Larry Scott shined like never before. Still, it's too easy to start Larry's story at his peak. To really understand who he was, we need to rewind a bit, back to October 12, 1938, in the small town of Blackfoot, Idaho. A quiet place, far from the big sports centers of the United States. As a kid, Larry didn't stand out for strength or size. Quite the opposite. He was skinny, narrow-shouldered, and often picked last in gym class. While other boys raced and showed off, Larry watched from the sidelines, dreaming of one day being like them. He noticed something. The stronger guys always got respect, attention, and, of course, the girls. That stuck with him. He didn't want to be the weak one anymore. He wanted to prove he could change his own destiny. That quiet determination sparked something powerful inside him. The will to transform not just his body, but his whole life. It all started by chance. One day, Larry found a bodybuilding magazine thrown in the trash. Out of curiosity, he flipped through it and saw pictures of men with sculpted, rock-solid physiques. He was instantly hooked. Right there, he made up his mind. He wanted to look like those champions. From that moment on, the skinny kid from Idaho had found his purpose. But there was one big problem. There were no gyms in town. No equipment, no trainers, no facilities. Still, Larry wasn't one to give up. He improvised, grabbing a tractor axle to use as a makeshift barbell. What looked like a limitation became his first great lesson. It's not about what you have, it's about what you do with it. At 16, Larry took his first serious step toward his dream. He joined the local YMCA, a small community gym, where he met a boxer who became his first mentor. The man taught him something simple but crucial: discipline and routine. Every workout needed a goal. Every set had a purpose. Surrounded by rusty weights and worn-out equipment, Larry learned the principle that would shape his future: consistency beats talent. Progress didn't come fast. His muscles grew slowly, and the mirror didn't always show the changes he hoped for. But he didn't quit. He realized he couldn't control how fast he'd see results, only how hard he worked. That mindset built his legendary discipline, training every single day, focused, even when no one believed in him. That quiet consistency became the foundation of everything that followed. Over time, the results began to show. His arms grew fuller, his chest expanded, and his once shy posture radiated confidence. People around town noticed the transformation. The skinny kid from Blackfoot was becoming someone new, and for the first time, he felt unstoppable. His confidence grew along with his muscles. The real turning point came when Larry decided he wanted to become Mr. America, the top bodybuilding title in the US back then. When he shared his dream, people laughed. They said he was too small, his shoulders too narrow, that he'd never stand a chance against the giants. But years of solitary training in Idaho had pushed him as far as he could go. The town was too small for his ambition, no equipment, no opportunities. So he made one of the boldest choices of his life: to move to California, the beating heart of bodybuilding. That's where the champions trained, where the fitness culture exploded, and where legends were born. When Larry arrived in California, he was blown away. Modern gyms, shiny equipment, and athletes who looked like they'd been carved from stone. He started training at Burt Goodrich's gym, one of the most respected spots at the time, while studying electronics at Valley College. His days were intense: classes by day, workouts by night. And with every rep, every drop of sweat, his dream of becoming the best in the world grew stronger and clearer. It was there that Larry met Lou Degny, better known as Mr. Muscle Beach, a real fitness icon of the era. Lou saw potential in the determined young man and decided to mentor him. Under his guidance, Larry learned more than just lifting. He learned presentation. He worked on posing, posture, and stage presence. Because in bodybuilding, it's not enough to have muscles. You've got to know how to show them off. But the real turning point came when Larry began training under Vince Gironda, the legendary Iron Guru. Vince was a strict coach, famous for his unconventional methods and his obsession with the mind-muscle connection. With Vince, Larry learned to turn every rep into an act of total control and awareness. It was the beginning of his transformation from a good athlete into a true icon. His progress was so remarkable that soon the whole country started noticing. His physique had a look no one had quite seen before: broad shoulders, a tight waist, perfect proportions. The aesthetic Larry achieved under Vince Gironda's coaching redefined bodybuilding standards. After years of relentless work, the results finally began to show. In 1958, he stepped on stage for the first time and won his debut contest, Mr. Idaho. To some, it was just a small local show, but for Larry, it was proof that his discipline was paying off. In 1959, he took a bold leap and entered Mr. Los Angeles, one of the toughest shows on the West Coast. There, he faced veterans with years of experience and still managed to take third place, shocking the judges and the crowd. That unexpected result sent a clear message. A new name was rising in the bodybuilding world. Larry Scott was no longer just a promising athlete. He was becoming a real contender. His true breakthrough came in 1960 when he won the Mr. California title, securing his place among the greats. Every pose, every appearance showed an athlete with incredible stage presence and an aesthetic that mesmerized the judges. The following year, he did it again, this time taking home the Mr. Pacific Coast Trophy. His progress was constant, and his body was evolving into a masterpiece of symmetry and proportion. Then came 1962, the year Larry reached national stardom by winning the coveted Mr. America title. That's when he stopped being just another talented bodybuilder and became a symbol of the American fitness ideal. His image started appearing on magazine covers everywhere, inspiring a generation of young lifters who dreamed of following his path. Larry embodied everything pure about the sport: hard work, discipline, and passion. And if Mr. America put him on the map, his back-to-back Mr. Universe titles in 1963 and 1964 turned him into an international star. For the first time, the whole world knew the name Larry Scott. By 1965, bodybuilding was on the verge of evolution. Joe Weider, the visionary founder of the IFBB, decided to create a competition unlike anything before it, a contest that would bring together only the best of the best. That's how Mr. Olympia was born, a stage reserved for true champions. And to launch this historic event, Weider needed someone who represented the very spirit of bodybuilding. The choice was obvious: Larry Scott. Larry wasn't just a top athlete. He was the face of modern bodybuilding. His image radiated discipline, aesthetics, and charisma. When he stepped on stage at that first Olympia, the audience knew they were witnessing something historic. With a flawless, perfectly balanced physique, Larry performed his poses with the grace of someone born for that moment. And by the end of the night, the announcement came like destiny fulfilled. Larry Scott was crowned the very first Mr. Olympia. But he wasn't done yet. The following year, in 1966, Larry returned to the Olympia stage sharper, more mature, and overflowing with confidence. His body looked sculpted to perfection, the ultimate blend of strength and beauty. Once again, he dominated from start to finish, claiming his second consecutive title. Two victories that not only etched his name among the legends, but also set the standard of excellence that would shape bodybuilding for generations to come. With those victories, Larry achieved something no one had done before: bodybuilding's triple crown: Mr. America, Mr. Universe, and Mr. Olympia. He had reached the absolute summit, the highest point any athlete could dream of. His unique blend of humility, skill, and discipline made him more than a champion. It made him a symbol of everything bodybuilding could represent. At that moment, Larry Scott wasn't just the best bodybuilder in the world. He was the man who turned the sport into a show, a pioneer who paved the way for generations of champions. Larry was the very definition of discipline. While most athletes were satisfied doing the basics, he treated every workout like an art form. He trained 6 days a week, with intense 2-hour sessions, always chasing the same goal: to perfect his body, his movement, and his mind. For him, training wasn't just about lifting. It was about understanding every lift. Each set, each rep had purpose and absolute focus on form. His routine was methodical. Larry split his training by muscle groups, making sure each part of his body got the exact stimulus it needed. He did about 8 to 10 reps per set, keeping the tempo under control and avoiding overdoing it. While others tried to move the heaviest weights possible, Larry followed a different path, the path of precision. He believed true strength came from control, not brute force. That mindset put him years ahead of his time. One of the pillars of his success was the mind-muscle connection. Larry believed every movement had to be felt, not just performed. He stayed laser-focused during each exercise, visualizing the muscle contracting, working, and growing. This mental focus not only improved his results, but turned his workouts into something almost meditative. Another key part of his training was minimizing rest between sets. Larry kept his body in constant motion, maintaining that famous pump, the tight, full feeling when blood rushes into the muscles. To him, training wasn't a series of stops and starts. It was one continuous flow of effort and concentration. That rhythm gave life to the aesthetic perfection that defined his physique. And of course, you can't talk about Larry Scott without mentioning the legendary Scott curl, or preacher curl, the exercise that still bears his name today. Designed to fully isolate the biceps, it became a cornerstone of bodybuilding training worldwide. Long before sports science became mainstream, Larry already understood that the ideal physique wasn't built just in the gym, but also at the table. At a time when most athletes didn't grasp the importance of nutrition, he confidently claimed that 85% of results came from diet. That was revolutionary thinking in the 1960s, when the common belief was simply lift more to grow. His diet was meticulously structured. Larry followed a high-protein, high-fat, and ultra-low-carb plan. He ate 6 to 8 meals a day, keeping his body constantly fueled for growth and recovery. It's estimated that he consumed around 250 grams of protein daily, an impressive number even by today's standards. Everything was measured, calculated, and repeated with near-scientific precision. But perhaps the most surprising detail of his diet was his massive milk intake. Larry drank almost 1 gallon, about 4 liters, of whole milk per day, along with shakes made from protein powder and heavy cream. That mix helped him build lean mass, while keeping fat gain to a minimum. Larry was also one of the first bodybuilders to use supplements in an organized, consistent way. In an era when sports nutrition barely existed, he was already taking protein powder, B-complex vitamins, liver formulas, and even hydrochloric acid to aid protein digestion. He viewed his body like a high-performance machine and made sure every part worked perfectly. That mindset placed him light years ahead of his peers. Then, in 1966, shortly after winning his second Mr. Olympia title, Larry shocked the world with an announcement no one saw coming. He was retiring. He was only 28, at the peak of his fame and his physical prime, and yet he chose to step away. While most athletes fight to stay on top, Larry walked away at the perfect moment, when his name was still synonymous with perfection. It was a rare decision, driven by balance and maturity. His reason was simple, but profound. After years of dedicating his body and soul to the sport, Larry wanted to focus on another part of life, marriage and family. He didn't want to be remembered for a slow decline, but for his best self. Many thought he was crazy, but to him, it was the only way to preserve his legacy. Larry believed that true greatness isn't about winning forever. It's about knowing when it's time to stop. Even away from the stage, Larry never lost his love for bodybuilding. More than a decade later, in 1979, that old fire came back to life. At 41 years old, he decided to make a short comeback, not to chase trophies, but to test his own limits. He stepped on stage again at 2 competitions, the Canada Diamond Pro Cup, where he placed 9th, and the Grand Prix Vancouver, where he didn't make the final lineup. His body wasn't the same, and the sport had evolved. The new generation of athletes was bigger, heavier, and part of an entirely different era. But Larry faced it all with humility and peace. Instead of dwelling on what was lost, he accepted that time had done its job. His comeback wasn't an attempt to relive the past. It was a quiet tribute to the passion that had always driven him. A farewell not marked by fanfare, but by meaning. After that experience, Larry decided to stay behind the scenes, where his wisdom and experience could truly make a difference. He became a trainer, consultant, and businessman, helping others find their own path in bodybuilding. Away from the spotlight, Larry Scott remained a model of discipline, humility, and purpose. A devoted member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, his life was guided by faith and strong moral values. Even after achieving worldwide fame, he stayed grounded. For him, true greatness wasn't in trophies or magazine covers. It was in living with integrity and gratitude. His faith kept him balanced through every chapter of life. Larry married twice and was the proud father of 5 children, to whom he dedicated his love and attention. He often said his greatest title wasn't Mr. Olympia, it was Dad. Amid responsibilities and memories of a glorious career, he found joy in the simple things, spending time with family, serving his community, teaching, and learning. The man who once inspired crowds now found his greatest audience at home. With the same entrepreneurial drive that once made him a champion, Larry founded Larry Scott Fitness and Nutrition. His mission was simple but powerful: to share what he had learned through decades of experience. His company offered consulting, personalized training programs, and custom equipment, helping people of all ages improve their fitness safely and mindfully. He turned his knowledge into a legacy, proving that his passion for bodybuilding never faded. Even long after retiring from competition, Larry never stopped training. He kept a consistent workout routine, still showing the same focus and energy from his golden years. Even in his 70s, he radiated vitality, strength, and enthusiasm. For him, training was no longer about beating someone. It was about taking care of the body, the mind, and the spirit. It was his way of staying true to the values that had defined his entire life. Time went on, but the name Larry Scott was never forgotten. In 1999, he received one of the highest honors an athlete could earn: induction into the IFBB Hall of Fame, alongside legends like Reg Park and Arnold Schwarzenegger, who often credited Larry as one of his earliest inspirations. That recognition celebrated more than an extraordinary physique. It honored a visionary mind that helped build the foundation of modern bodybuilding. Larry was also the first bodybuilder to truly break into the mainstream. In an era when most athletes lived in the shadows, he brought bodybuilding to movie screens, TV shows, and advertising campaigns. His clean, charismatic image captivated audiences and showed the world that bodybuilding wasn't just about muscle. It was about discipline, art, and perseverance. He helped turn a niche sport into a global movement admired by millions. A lasting symbol of his legacy is the Scott Bench, the piece of equipment designed specifically for the bicep curl that made him famous, the preacher curl. To this day, that bench can be found in gyms all over the world, carrying not only his name, but his philosophy: focus, control, and perfect execution. It's a reminder that Larry's innovations went beyond his time and continue to inspire athletes to this very day. Maybe Larry's greatest impact wasn't just on bodybuilding as a sport, but on its very aesthetic. He was one of the cornerstones of the golden era, a time when balance and proportion mattered more than sheer size. His physique was pure harmony: wide shoulders, a tight waist, and muscles carved with almost artistic symmetry. That vision reshaped the idea of the perfect body and inspired an entire generation of champions who followed. Through his dedication, charisma, and example, Larry Scott helped elevate bodybuilding into a respected, admired sport across the globe. In the final years of his life, Larry chose peace over spotlight. He settled in Utah, surrounded by family and the faith that had always guided him. Far from the crowds and cameras, he lived simply, focused on what truly mattered. His life, once filled with trophies and applause, became centered on deeper values: love, spirituality, and gratitude. Even in silence, he continued to inspire everyone who crossed his path. As time went on, Larry faced a new kind of challenge: Alzheimer's disease, a cruel condition that slowly steals memory and mental clarity. Yet, Even as his mind began to fade, his spirit never did. The bodybuilding community continued to honor him with love and admiration. Friends, fans, and former students often spoke of his gentle smile and calm wisdom. And even when words escaped him, the spark in Larry's eyes still showed the heart of a man who never stopped fighting. On March 8, 2014, the world of bodybuilding said goodbye to one of its greatest legends. Larry Scott passed away at 75, leaving behind a legacy built on faith, discipline, and perseverance. The news moved athletes and fans worldwide. Tributes poured in from magazines, social media, and bodybuilding icons everywhere, each message a reflection of how deeply Larry had touched people's lives. His passing marked more than the end of a biography. It marked the close of an era driven by pure passion, discipline, and love for the art of shaping the human body. Larry didn't just belong to that era, he defined it. His name became synonymous with excellence, and his story a timeless reminder that true immortality comes from the impact we leave on others. Larry Scott taught one of life's most powerful lessons. It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is how far you're willing to go. He began as a skinny kid lifting a tractor axle in his backyard and became one of the greatest icons in bodybuilding history. His journey proves that determination can turn limits into achievements and dreams into reality. Larry's story goes far beyond muscle. It's a story of resilience, vision, and unshakable belief in oneself. He believed when no one else did. He worked when no one was watching. And he won not just competitions, but his own doubts. His life reminds us that true strength isn't found in your arms or legs, but in the mind and heart of someone who refuses to give up. From a small-town kid in Idaho to a global symbol of bodybuilding, Larry Scott inspired millions. He showed that success doesn't come from shortcuts, it comes from daily discipline. His devotion to proportion and aesthetics proved that bodybuilding can be more than a sport. It can be an art form and a calling. He redefined what it means to be a champion, and his influence still echoes in every gym around the world. Larry taught the sport to value intelligence, harmony, and purpose, not just brute size and power. His philosophy was simple but profound. The mind must lead the body, not the other way around. He brought reflection and sensitivity to a world often seen as purely physical. And that mindset is exactly what made him eternal, because his ideas continue to shape generations. Being a champion isn't about standing on the podium. It's about keeping your feet on the ground when the crowd is gone. That single phrase captures who Larry Scott truly was. A man who won with humility, inspired with honesty, and lived with purpose. And even as time moves on, his light still shines in everyone who believes in the power of faith, discipline, and hard work. Because legends like Larry Scott never disappear, they just find a new stage.